Siyabulisa. Greetings to everyone. It's a Friday night. People are out partying, and here we are. Siyabulisa ke. Sithemba niyaphila. Themba niyaphila. Welcome. I keep this one very quick. Nice and quick. Thank you for the gift. If you guys have got something you'd like for me to talk about, whether it's a question you have, if I can answer, of course, because I don't have all the answers. If I can answer, I promise I will answer. If I can't, then I can't. But this is the chance to put your question. Yes, feel free to ask your question. Yeah. Of Nqakwe. So they led the Intinga. And then you had another section known as Iqauqa. Iqauqa was led by the Nkabane people, Amankabane. Iqauqa was civilians. And then Intinga was nobilities, royal families. So those who were involved in the war and the battles were in those two sections. But then there were other groups as well, based on ages and all that. So not everyone was in the same group. But the most experienced and the bravest warriors were neither Intinga nor Iqauqa. They were Indwe, the Blue Crane. So those would be the most prolific Xhosa warriors. They were the Blue Crane, Indwe. Now, the Battle of 1818 in the Malinde, the fells of Malinde, just at the foothills of the Mathole mountain range in Debe. Idabila lase Malinde. When the poets remind us of that story, bati yawa indwe, phezu kwenye indwe, kwela kwa hoho. Yawa indwe phezu kwendwe, kwela kwa hoho. Yadla impethu. Yahlomela ihodoshe kwela kwa hoho. So it refers to that battle that in Malinde, even the most prolific warriors died one upon the other. So when they say yawa indwe phezu kwendwe, indwe referring to those guys who wore the blue crane feathers on these sides. Those were the most elite of the warriors of our nation. In fact, the ANC took after this military order, because these are military orders, you see. They took after this military order of Indwe, and they created an honorary order known as Order of Isithwalandwe, those who put the crane on top of their head. So, yeah, those were the most prolific Indwe. But also you had many military divisions. Some depended on who was the leader. For example, Maqoma, the prince, who fought for a very long time against Europeans and ended up dying in Robben Island, who had many different wives. His wives were called Amatyabhakazi, the wives of uMaqoma. The reason why the wives of uMaqoma were called Amatyabhakazi, because ityabhakazi is a woman who's always on the horseback. These were riders, women who used to ride their horses or even their cows. And these women used to accompany the chiefs wherever they went. In fact, a lot of Xhosa kings and chiefs, when they were arrested, which means basically captured by the colonizers, when they went to jail, the women were always there next to them, voluntarily. The women were not arrested. They actually chose to be there next to them. To such a point that when Maqoma was arrested and sent to Robben Island, Kaki was there. Kaki, his wife, She was there next to him when Maqoma was arrested in Algoa Bay. What is this place? Gqeberha today. His other wife, Nongqina, was there. Nongqina was there. So he was known for that, for having amatyabhakazi. These wives were always with him in everything that he did. The followers of Maqoma were known by Jing. They were called Jing. Amajing. The Jingo people. Remember now, some of these military orders are named after the favorite ox of the chief that they follow, or of the prince that they follow. So Amajing were one of the military orders of Maqoma. Also, they were called, I'm trying to think of the name now. Oh, Ononchinga, yes, Ononchinga. They were also called Ononchinga. True. They were called Ononchinga. Now, this Nchinga is not the same as the Nchinga of Amakiko. This Nchinga is referring to the plumage of animal skin that people used to wear. So if you take a jackal, impunguche, or iqili, or unilash, you take a jackal, you take its skin, then you take the tail, you create a plumage on the head that falls down. Or you take other animals, you create some kind of appendage known as Nchinga. So I think that military order of Maqoma was named after that. Maqoma himself was called Unompondwana, uphunguza nampofu, isijoha sonothonto, ujukutya maphambili engawasingisanga mntwini. Why was Maqoma called Nompondwana? What is Nompondwana? Nompondwana comes from the word impondo. Impondo, it's a plural for horns. Upondo is one, impondo is plural. So when they call him Nompondwana, they mean the one with little horns. It's in reference to what? To small cows that are still growing horns. But also it's in reference to these buttons that were valued back in the day. These little buttons that women used to put on their skin capes is ibhaca. So women used to wear izibhaca and then they would put buttons there as decor, especially royal women. And a lot of those buttons, they had a conical shape like little horns. They were called Unompondwana. Oh, punguza nampofu, udesha oneqhubu. Isijoha sonothondo. What is udesha oneqhubu? Udesha is the monitor lizard. Kuqam. Uqhubu is the speed. Udesha oneqhubu nguqam obalekayo, a very fast monitor lizard. Uqam akavinjelwa. You know, uqam, the monitor lizard, is a very stubborn little reptile. If that thing is going this direction, you're not gonna stop it. You have to beat it up for it to change its direction. So when they call him udeshe onoqhubu, it's like he's as stubborn as a monitor lizard and he's a very fast person in battle. Uphunguza nampofu. Isijoha sonothonto. Isijoha is a warrior. Nothondo is his mother. Nothondo was his mother. He looked like his mother, by the way. If you look at Maqoma's picture and you look at his face, he looks exactly like his mother. In fact, he was so close to his mother when he was growing up like this. He took a lot of habits from his mother. That's why even in his praises, we say, isijoha sonothonto. Punguza nampofu udesha onoqhubu. Ujutya maphambili engawasingisanga mntwini. But because of the European alcohol, a lot of our royal families were destroyed because they were drunkards. By design, they were drunkards. Maqoma himself. That's why when they praise him, but ungundlela zinamaqhekeza ebhotile. Undlela zinamaqhekeza ebhotile. It's a respectful way to say he's always drinking alcohol. Amaqhekeza, it's broken bottles of alcohol. Remember, poets cannot openly criticize the king. They have to hide the message. This is why one of our poets wrote a children's poem. Ngubani nalo, uyeye, uhamba nobani noyise. Umphatheleni amasi, ngendebe njani, ebomvu. Wayibeka phi esibaya. Kwesingakanani, kwesikhulu. Yimayiselwe zidenge zodwa. When he asked, who is this? And the person who answers is Nguyeye. But who's with Yeye? It's his father. Referring to who? Abamhlophe. Ukuphathele ntoni amasi? What is Yeye bringing? Yeye brings amasi. So whatever Yeye is coming with, or Yeye's father is coming with, it represents a lifeline, represents sustenance for us, income, resources. But now the poet is asking, ngendebe enjani, what kind of container are these amasi contained in? The person who answers, ibomvu, it's a red container. Now the poet already knows, no, there's no way. Amasi cannot be in a red container. He's like, where did he put it? Uyibeke pilendebe. The other one says, esbaya, in the kraal, the sacred place. Remember, the kraal is the sacred place, it's the altar. And then this one asks, esingakanani isibaya? The other one is like, esikhulu, the biggest kraal in the house where the cows are. Hey, the poet starts to say, imayiselwe zidenge zodwa. So only fools should be drinking this amasi and this ubisi. So people thought this is just a children recitation. No, that was a warning against alcohol consumption. It was a warning against alcohol consumption because a lot of the royal families were destroyed with alcohol. Even Hintsa himself. In 1835, the day he gets killed by the Southey brothers, they were busy offering him alcohol, telling him drink, and then tell your people to give up the land. We get reports that Hintsa kept on saying no. Remember, Hintsa's brothers were there with him. He was not alone. He was there. The brothers were there with him. They kept on giving him alcohol. Drink, Hintsa, drink, Hintsa, drink, Hintsa. Hintsa was like, no. And then, obviously, he was unalived. They shot him from here. They took the face. They took the teeth. They took the ears. They took the eyes. People say even the skull. To such a point that when we were young, there were these candies, these sweets, lekkers, that were in the shape of a head. They had this spongy texture to them. They were in the shape of a head. We call them Hintsa's head. Literally, that's what we call them. When I go to the shop, I tell the shopkeeper, I'm here to buy Hintsa's head. We didn't know as children the significance of that. Even as children, if you kept on like asking for expensive stuff from your mother was like, I'm done. Maybe you are looking for Hintsa's head because what you want, I don't have. Oh, another note on Hintsa. Apparently, Shaka knew about Hintsa. And that army that I spoke about, that big army. It is said that actually the communication was initiated by a European, Henry Francis Finn. Henry Francis Finn. He was the one who was sent from KZN to send messages in Eastern Cape. Some say this is why Shaka was pushing to come to Xhosaland, but he didn't get to Xhosaland. Firstly, they came all the way to Emampondweni, Impi Amabhece. They didn't win. They came again, but this time around, they penetrated Emampondweni. They penetrated KwaBomvana. They crossed Mthatha River, Amazulu, in the 1800s. They went all the way to Bomvana land in Ngwangube. Then they returned back. So it is said that Shaka had heard about this army that is supposedly so big, takes the whole day. So, but I think I'm going to dedicate some time to the wars because the wars are very complicated and they are not as simple as people make them seem. For example, people will say the Xhosa Wars of Resistance. Many people fought in those wars. Yes, primarily the wars were targeted against AmaXhosa, the hegemony of AmaXhosa. So when I start talking about the wars now, it's going to be so deep, it's going to take so long, but it's going to be worth it because some of the people who fought in the wars still have descendants today that we know. Some of the heroes, they have descendants today. Some of those descendants are historians. Some of them are authors today. And I have to expose that, no, this one is a descendant of this guy. This one is a descendant of this guy who did this. Some of the betrayers have descendants to this day. And some of those descendants ended up running our country. Yeah. So that is King Yinsa. Now there was another question about ukuyuca nokusuka. Now the question was whether there's a relationship between L and S. Between L and S in terms of language, like that whole transitional relationship that happens. Well, what I know is that Y tends to have an interchangeable relationship with Z and KH or H itself. So I'll give an example. A chicken, inkukhu. Sometimes the same word may be pronounced as iyuku. In fact, my mother, when she refers to little little chicks, she calls them amayuku. So that the KH sound becomes a Y. But also a lot of L sounds do become Y. Like those who speak with ukuyeyeza, instead of saying ukubeleta, they would say ukubeyeta. I mean, you all you have to do is to observe children, like young children, when they speak. That whole thing we call ukuteketa. The whole thing we call ukuteketa. It's an actual speech ukuteketa. That's why bathi bayatekela or bayateketa. So instead of ukubeleta, bathi bona ukubeyeta. Instead of ubukhulu or ilanga, they will say iyanga. Yabo, yanga. So I'm saying the word yuka and kuka and suka could also be an indication of an old tie into those sound changes. I don't have a specific case where L and S change from one, like between each other. I've never seen that. What I've seen with S in old words is that some words with F, like umfazi, they also have S, like nsati or msikati. So I've seen the F sound and the S sound, those are definitely interchangeable. So where we say ukufa, others say khuswa, that's F and S. Umfazi, nsati, or musadi. In fact, there's a name amongst Amazulu and Amahlubi. Some say Lufenu Lwenja. Some say Lufu Lwenja. Two different names that have nothing to do with each other. Now, I'm interested in the word Lufu Lwenja here. Lufu is actually the word ulusu today. So when we talk about ulusu, we're generally talking about either skin or some kind of membrane, or what do we call this? The internal stomach of an animal, which looks like skin. When you touch like the different stomach, omasum and all that, they look like skin. So when we say ulusu, it's skin. And back in the day, in the 1600s, 1500s, they would say lufu, you see. So there's a relationship between S and F. It's guaranteed. Lusu, ulufu. Umfazi, nsati, musadi. Ukufa, khuswa. Which is why we end up saying ukuswela or ukusweleka. To be at a loss or to lose or to be lost, you see. So there's that F and S, relationship. Why? Because for there to be a relationship between sounds, they have to have an overlap in how sounds are produced. Now we need to understand, when you speak, you are actually producing a sound. You are producing a sound with your mouth, but you're using other organs as well. You can use your diaphragm, you use your lungs when you produce sound, you use your trachea, you use which is your voice box, you use your throat, your esophagus, you use the palate, you use your uvula, you use your teeth, your dentals, you use your labials, your lips, you use your alveolar. So you use different parts. And words, you must see where it is produced and what it overlaps with. So let me make an example once again with S. S is produced here. S. You need your teeth to produce S. And then your teeth have to be together. S. You can't say S, but your mouth is open. Your teeth have to be together. S. Now, what is the overlap with F? With F, you still need your mouth to be closed. But this time around, your teeth don't have to be together. One of the upper teeth you have to bite your lower teeth. For F. Bite your lower teeth. But sometimes, amongst Bavenda, the F is a bit different. The F may be, it may be like just blowing. This means that these sounds, S and F, are enunciated in the same vicinity, around the same area, using the same organs. So it's easy now for these sounds to overlap over time in different groups and end up being the same words. That's why then you'll have huswa and kufa. You'll have lufu and lusu. You have mfazi and nsati. You have omsikati. Because they do overlap the sounds. But it's going to be very rare to have ukufa and ukula. It's going to be very rare. There has to be some kind of process that we can establish that, it makes sense why these sounds are related, because they are enunciated similar. I totally agree, Mukaranga. So also impairments, speech impediments, inability to say certain words does contribute actually to some developments. I'll give you an example. You see, we talk about the lost click, the palatal click. That click, for example, I can say it, but if I'm using the palatal click, it's gonna be it, But I know people who speak like this. They can't say they have an inability, they have an impediment. So that is called a speech impediment. But that speech impediment somehow, sometimes occurs to be a genuine sound that really exists. Like, when you say, that's a real sound. It's a palatal click. So you can see it's a speech impediment. In fact, when you study the International Phonetic Alphabet, there's a section that deals with speech impediments purely, because that does contribute. In fact, if you, as a Zunda speaker, when I listen to people who speak Isilala and Gutekela, it's like they have an impediment, according to me. When I listen to them, the way I speak and the way they speak, they sound like a child. So I'm like, no, man, this is like a child. We're speaking like a baby most here. Like, for example, uyanga, uzwide kayanga, like yanga. I'm like, no, it's langa. So in my mind, that's like a speech impediment. So even that, what we consider speech impediments, because of the language you speak, is words in other languages or in other dialects. You see? It's words in other dialects. Emukone. Mukoni, are you still with us? You've been commenting this same thing here. I'm worried maybe you don't actually see it. So there's that. Tisetso says ukutekela is a terrible form of communication. Why do you think so, Tisetso? Why do you think it's bad to tekela? I think it's for me, ukutekela is the perfect transition from Zulu and Xhosa, which is Zunda, towards Xitsonga. For me, tekela is the perfect transition. You see? I feel like if there were no tekela dialects, some of these languages we have would be hard to see the link between. So that group of tekela languages is kind of like the in-between group. It explains some things. I'll give you another example. You see, in tekela, ZW, when you speak Zunda and you say ilizwe, or ilizwi, the country, the voice, or a word, that's Zunda. But when you tekela, you say live and livi, a country and a voice. Ilizwe, live. Ilizwe, livi. Now, the sound between the difference between ilizwe and live, for me, it's like we skipped something in the middle. It's like we skipped something, and that thing that we skipped is satisfied when I listen to Shona sometimes. Because in Shona, I will see a word with ZV, 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 or SV, sv, sv. Sometimes it's whistled like mashringo, or masfingo. For me, that SV is like whatever is in between zwe and ve. Ili zwe and live. It's like in between those sounds, there's supposed to be another one, like live. Do you get it? I'm not sure if you get it, but that's how my brain works. So I'm thinking thousands of years ago, there must have been other forms of sounds that existed in this continuum for us to move from zwe to ve. Because there's no way you hear someone says, Elizwe, and then when in your mind, yeah, I live. You understand? If you keep on trying, if you have an inability to say zwe, you'll end up with zve. You get it? And that's where now the languages like Shona, Karanga, Zulu, Korekore, some form of Chivenda, some parts of Xitsonga, all the Tsonga languages, that's why they are important, because then when you look at those languages, you will see some elements that close the gaps. You get it? They close the gaps. Like there are people from Mozambique I know who will speak like utashikuma leshislaba utashikuma. That it's crazy, but it's there. It's the whistled S. It's S, whistled sibilant. It's S. It's one type of S. And this is good because it just enriches. It just enriches the heritage, the linguistic heritage of South Africa. Look at Zwitu. In Chivenda is Swiru in Xitsonga. Like izinto ngesixhosa. In Shona, it's SV. You see, all of that continuum, you can see it. You can see it. Utashikuma leshislabayo. Uzayifumana le nto uyifumanayo. Le nto uyifunayo. There is another language similarity there. Now, back to that first question. That first question, if between L and S, there can ever be a relationship. It's possible, it can be there. But for us to understand that relationship, we need to understand the other languages like Xitsonga. Just now, I had an epiphany moment. Utashikuma. Kuma is Xhosa Fuma or fumana. Thank you, Lamumba. Thank you very much. So when in Xitsonga you say utashukuma, kuma is the closer way to say uzazifumana. That F and K relationship now, which is very rare. Kuma, fumana. Basically fuma, if you think about it. Fuma. Now, fuma and kuma, I've already explained K and Y. Like nkuku and yuku and wuku. And then we've explained that ukuyuka nokusuka do have a relationship. So if there's a relationship between L and S, it would be a long. Utashkuma leshushulaba. Tashkuma. Untolobela ndakuba. That's how the Tonga people say. Nakuba. Tashkuma leshushulaba. And then the Swahili will say, nitakupiga wewe. Sasa nitakupiga makofu. You know, I'm also somewhat of a linguist, and a polyglot. I love languages generally. It's not Korakobab only and Kunkia. I know some people like, hey, talk about Kunkia. It's not just Kunkia, man. Language is it's like a long tree, or a tall tree, or whatever, phylogenetic tree with many branches. Anyway, so to answer that question finally, if there's a link between the L sounds and the S sounds, that link would have to be explained by L moving to Y. Yes, Y moving to K, K moving to F, and F finally moving to S. Like I've explained it, that L can move to Y. Like langa can also be called yanga. There by the Zwide people, but in yanga, uzwide ga yanga. Langa can be yanga. Beleta can be beyeta. So L becomes Y. Y becomes K. Yuku, inkuku. Yomo, inkomo. You see? Oh, yuku, kuku. Yomo, komo. Yes, L becomes Y, Y becomes K, K becomes F, and I can only explain this if I know Xitsonga, because K becomes F in Xitsonga when Batsonga say kuma, utashkuma. Amaxhosa say uzazifumana. So K becomes F. And F becomes S, like lufu becomes ulusu, and ukufa becomes khuswa. So that L and S relationship is there, but it's hidden through layers of linguistic evolution. I've answered you. Yes, it's possible that L and S have a relationship, just like Y and S can have a relationship, but that relationship has to go through a process. Amago. It's beautiful, my people. Language. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I see some people are requesting, I think I'll wait a bit for now. I want to touch on the word ngumayo or ngumalo, and kumalo, or which could be kumayo. Yes, it's true, Mukaranga. It could be also the other way around. So it's not always L becomes Y. Y can become L as well. Yes, Y can become L as well. Here's another interesting one, my people. LDZ and R. I'm coming back right now to Kumalo and Ngumalo. I'm coming back. Just let me just quickly enjoy this one. LDZR. That I always call these processes the interchangeability phenomenon. That's what I call them, because the word can stay the same. It's just the sound that changes. So they're just interchangeable amongst each other between these mutually intelligible languages. Yes. So when you say now LD, Lesotho is a perfect example. Exactly. Ritebuho and Ditebuho. Ritebuho and Ditebuho. Liseli and Lisedi. But even better, let me bring it back to Nguni. You see, I once made a video saying the word indima refers to land, not to playing a role. Hey, people lost their minds. That's when I realized that, maybe indeed we do have a problem. We do actually have a problem, because why people don't know indima come from the word lima, which means lima is not to plant, it's to plow. To plant is chala. When you are planting, we are chala, or in isiZulu, we are wachala. Hulima is to actually plow the land. That's why a farmer is called umlimi, because umlimi is the one who works the land, not umchali. Bakhona bangumchali. There are people in KZN with the same name umchali. Those ones are the planters. You see. But let's go back. I said ndima is land. Yeah, demand or marima. Exactly, that's where I'm going. People could not see how the word ndima and the word lima are the same thing. It is the same thing. Sometimes, when it's in singular, it takes the L version. When it's in plural, it takes the D version in isiXhosa. So you have lima in plural and ndima. No, lima in singular and ndima in plural. Ndima is the land itself, especially land that has already been plowed. But even if you had not plowed it, it can still be called ndima. The Amakwati have an ancestor called Ndima who used to do farming, which was rare for a man to do farming. Men, generally, they go hunting and take care of the cattle. You see, this thing that says Uyidlalile Indima, I destroyed it already because it's wrong. You can't dlala indima. It's like saying you've eaten your roll. Like, it doesn't make any sense because roll is not something to be eaten. Roll actually comes from the word a roll of paper, a scroll. When Europeans were performing in theater, you'd be given a scroll, a roll. That's why they say play a role, because it was a play originally in Europe that you had to play a role. For us, indima is not a roll of paper. For us, indima is land that you've worked. So you say sebenza indima yakho or enza indima yakho. And then what happens on June 30th? You are stupid, Shem. You are hearing everything we are talking about, and all you want to talk about is June 30th. You are a stupid fool. This is exactly why Africa is the way it is. The brain is full of water. Anyway, L becomes D. Lima, to plow. Ndima, land that has been plowed. But it's even more lebe. You see this? We call this isilebe. Isilebe. But it's also called udebe. Debe, the lip. Kunjalo so bes. Kunjalo. Udebe is the lip. In fact, the cup that we used to drink water back in the day, because it touches the lip, it was called indebe. It was called indebe. To this day, Amaxhosa call the cup like a trophy. They call it indebe. Well, I guess you can drink from it. So the L and the D manifest there again. But even better, you see the chin is called, it's a levu. Levu. But the beard on the chin is called udevu. Devu. Once again, manifestation of the same thing. Udevu or indevu in plural. So that's another thing. People have lost the singular and plural thing. So nowadays, they know only the plural version, indevu. No, udevu. When you refer to it as a singular, you can call it udevu. Unedevu, unetuma, unezinyo legolide, unedevu, unetuma, unezinyo legolide. Oh, yini madoda. Kujambasi lona ngulisa ngucansi ngusanzanza kuhlangovelweni nguzidula ngubo zemhlophe. kuthiwa phala kuhle kwedini le ndlela yehlela wabulabulayo ngathi umthakathi injalo. Indebe is the proper name for a cup. Inkomishi or ikomichi, that's Afrikaans, that's Dutch. It's from komichi. It's like a little basin. L&D, yes, L&D. So, slave, indev. Ukulima, indima. I'm thinking of other examples now. It's escaping me. But yes, that does happen. L and D. Now, L and Z can also be the case. L and Z can also be the case. For example, there's that famous saying, ukuphozisa amaseko. It's the same as ukupholisa amaseko. Same thing. There's no difference there. Phozisa and polisa. Ukupheza nokuphelisa. Same thing. Pheza. Or pelisa, or phela. Same thing. L and Z also do happen to be interchangeable. Sometimes L, when it's in the causative form, changes to Z. I'll give you an example. When I say phumla, I'm saying rest. When I say phumlisa, I can also say phumza. When I say phumela, I can also say phumeza. When I say wela, crossover, I can also say weza. L and Z. This one tends to go with the verbal form. If the verb is in causative form, it likes to use Z. If the verb is in the causative form, it likes to use Z. If it is in the infinitive, not in the infinitive. If it's in the transitive form, it uses L. So L and Z. We've mentioned L and D. That's why you have Lesotho and South African Sesotho using L and D interchangeably. Same thing. Now, I've mentioned Z. I might as well mention T. Between Zunda and Tekela, we already know that one. Siswati and Isiswazi. Swati and Swazi, same thing. Izindaba and Tinzaba, same thing. In fact, I will mention, you see, you need to know these things so that you understand how things connect. Remember, if you go to Xitsonga, in Xitsonga you find a lot of mantisetsu. Izibunu and tibunu. Umdidi and umdzidzi. Sorry guys, it's this I was talking about tibunu. Hey. And you know one thing I want to say, we need to hear more Siswati, man. I think Emaswati don't speak Siswati a lot. We need to hear more of that language. It's so sad. We don't hear more of Siswati. There's this what I'm hearing is always mixed with this Zulu. And I ask, why do you guys do this? It's like, Zulu has influence on our language. No, you must speak Siswati most. That's how we get to appreciate the beauty of the language. It's like Amaxhosa are busy speaking Xhosa and English and Afrikaans at the same time. The beauty of the language is compromised. That's the sad thing. You preserve the language by speaking it. And then you have Zindebele. It's even worse. And Zindebele is not one thing. There's multiple Zindebeles. Thank you guys. You have multiple Zindebele. You have Zindebele Sakwanzunza. Sithi umdrazana. Then there's Zindebele sakwamlendlana. Sithi wekhethu ukusumayela isumayela Sindebele. Sindrebele lesunya isindrebele lesumale yelwako. Esakwamlendlana. Sakwagegana. Basumayela. Very similar to Siphuthi, by the way. Very similar to Siphuthi. Bathi bona wekhethu. Ebaphuthi bona bathi wekhethu. Anyway, back to LD, which we've already proven. LZ, which we've already proven. Z and T, we know it. Emati, amanzi. Tinzaba is indaba. Tibunu is bunu. We know that one. Now, there's the R element. And I need you guys to listen to me so that you know this. The R element. In indigenous words, when R is involved, it can either be the rolled R. Thank you guys. It can be the rolled R. It can be the uvular R, and I'm gonna enunciate them so that you know the differences. It can be the guttural R. We've got many different R's in our indigenous languages. The rolled R is rrr, rrr, like riatile, riatile. That's the rolled R. You find it in a lot of the Sotho-Tswana languages. You find it in Xitsonga, like kurula, kurula. You find it in Isihlubi. Isihlubi uses the rolled R a lot as a standalone. It manifests at times attached to consonants in isimpondo and in isinrebele. So when the mandrebele say umdrazana or umdrazana, that is the rolled R. When a mampondo say umtram or umundru, emtrampe umundru, amampondo, when they say that, that is the rolled R. So in isimpondo and isinrebele, that rolled R manifests attached. It attached to what? To consonants. But in Xitsonga, in Tswana, the rolled R stands alone. We have that one. It's the rolled R. There's a name for it. I just forgot it now. And there's a symbol for it. And then we have another R, the guttural. Now, this is the Xhosa R. In Xhosa, this R is always there. It manifests in words like khadebe, khachabe, khiba, khamadi. This is the guttural R. It's also an R. So when they say there's no R in isiXhosa, they are lying. Because in isiXhosa we have khachabe. That is an R right there. Linguistically, khudulu is an R. It's a guttural R. Khulumente kwelen. AmaZulu sometimes struggle with this specific R. And I'm talking about in indigenous words. AmaZulu sometimes struggle. They will say, hahabe. I remember Ungizwe, when Ngizwe went to Eastern Cape with Phakalo Mthagatha, when they were leading the protests. Because Qonce is a hahabe area. They were saying, hahabe. And it's just funny to listen to. I'm like, wow. Like, how are you unable to say it? But that's the thing. When you're not used to saying something. But it's crazy. He says kwahahabe. He doesn't say kwasasabe. That's the crazy thing. There's a rule to how the body functions. There's a rule to how the body functions. He didn't say kwasasabe or kwashashabe. No, uti kwahahabe. Because it's enunciated by a certain so he's trying to say it correctly, but the body is unable to do it because it's not used to doing it. So the body fails at some point when the voice, because the voice is pushed down from the diaphragm. Ilizwi liphuma kwisiqange, liyenyuka ngomqala ngoqhoqhoqo. Xa lifika apha encarharheni, kunzima, urharhazo aluphumi. Aluphumi urharhazo. So he was trying to say it. That's why he ends up saying, hahabe. He is not able to produce the guttural sound. If he was not trying to say it, he would have ended up with, slapha kwalalabe or kwashashabe. But he knows he's not supposed to use the tongue or the lips. He's supposed to use the throat. Yes, it is rare in KZN. So you'll find one or two villages that will say it. In fact, I've heard even amongst amandebele amahlabezulu eZimbabwe, I've heard amahlabezulu, there's a guy I know wakwaNdlovu lihlabezulu. When he says I'm leaving, uthi ngiyahamba, ngiyahamba no, yabo, oh hayi ukuhamba kwami ngizophila ngibuye. So uthi uyahamba, hamba. You see, that is the guttural sound. That is R. That is R. So when they say no, there's no R is there in Xhosa and in other languages. It's the guttural R. I already addressed the rolled R. Now I'm talking about the guttural R. Now there's another R. It's called the uvula. This R is called the uvula R. I need you to listen properly. This is the R that is produced in the uvula. Uvula is, what is it called in Sizulu? What do you guys call it? That thing there. That thing that's hanging. I forgot its name now. Ulaka. Do you call it ulaka? I think so. Makes sense, Dabezit. Makes sense. But yeah, ulaka, we call it ingakangak. It's lagalak. Yes. We call it ingakangak. Ngakangak. You see, that lagalak is a softened version of ngakangak. That ngakangak is the one we use to produce the other R now. It's you see the difference between and they're completely different. Two different sounds. The sound is the guttural. So khadebe, khachabe, khiba, kholihlahla. Now I'm coming back to the uvula. I want to teach you guys something today. Sounds can come in two forms. There's more, but I'm going to mention two forms. The same sound, it can come in two forms. It can come in a voiceless form, which is high-pitched, or in a voiced form, which is low-pitched. So you can produce the same sound in a deep voice or in a low, high-pitched voice. A good example. Kau, kau, referring to a dude. Kau, that is a high pitch. It's called the voiceless. Kau, gau, gau. It's called the voiced. Same sound. One is voiceless, kau. One is voiced, gau. You see, it's K and G. The truth is that K and G are produced exactly the same way. They are exactly the same sound. The difference between K and G is that K has a high pitch and G has a low pitch. So all you need to do is to manipulate the depth of your voice. Same thing with when you say chachabe, you can also say chachabe. It's a completely different sound. So when we talk about roaring in Xhosa, we say chagama. It's still an R, although it's written with a G. That G is just there to show you that it's a deep voice. The G doesn't change anything about that voice, the production of the voice. So the way you enunciate the sound is exactly the same way. Chachabe, chachabe. What is the difference is how deep your voice is. So we call chachabe the voiceless guttural and chachabe the voiced guttural. So sounds are always like that. Always like that. Now let's go back to the uvula R. We mentioned the rolled R. Rrr. We mentioned the guttural R. Both these R can be voiceless or voiced. Like an example, the rolled R, rara, rara of Botswana is voiceless. Kurula of Vatsonga is voiced. When Vatsonga say kurula, it's voiced. I think that's why they put an H there. The H doesn't change anything about the sound. It's still the exact same sound. But the H is there to tell you that you need to use a voiced version. Rara, rara, two different voices, same sound. Chacha, rara, two different voices, same sound. Now, the uvula. For me, it's the most interesting R because you need to use islagalaka or ingaka, the uvula. It's this is the one Basotho in Lesotho like to use. Instead of saying lirato, some Basotho in Lesotho will say lirato. Lirato laka. Lirato laka. It's not lirato laka. It's lirato. The sound comes from here. Lirato is here. It's here. But lirato, it's here. Rato. If you don't have a uvula, you'll never be able to say this word, whether you like it or not. It's impossible because the place of enunciation is absolutely important. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to have another live late tomorrow, maybe like 8 at night. I'm probably going to have a couple of lives for the next few days. For now, the time allows me to host live, so I'll keep on hosting. I'll keep on hosting. I'll try and fix the notifications. I saw people say the notifications are not working fine. So all these R's, lirato, khadebe, they are all indigenous. Now, there's one last very important thing I want to say in terms of R. R is called rhotic. They are called rhotic, these sounds. So it's not the letter R that matters. It's the sound itself. So sometimes, Basotho Bapedi or Batswana will put a G, like tebucho. That cho is still an R sound linguistically, regardless of how it's written, because that tebucho and that chachabo of Maxhosa are the same sound. So it's a rhotic sound. It doesn't matter if they write a G or an X or a KG, like chauchelo. Chauchelo is an ejective guttural sound. Exactly. Tebucho and tebuo. Again, place of articulation. Lebuchang or libuang. That's why Bavenda Bati Ndoribuwa. Ndoribuwa ngamanda. Ndiyabulela ngamandla. Ndizvone. Zvezvo ndizvezvo. Chivenda ndiruambo lwabudi. Luvenda ndiruambo lwabudi. Very nice language. People are sleeping on Chivenda or Luvenda. It depends where you come from and how you will say it. But so now the last thing I'm gonna say about R, the letter R, ne? The letter R, when it comes from indigenous language, the rolled R, as you find it in Xitsonga, in Kurula, Rulani, as you find it in Sesotho, Lirato, as you find it in other languages, when it comes to Nguni now, it dies completely. The R, the rolled one, dies completely, except in Isindrebele, where it's always attached to what? To a consonant, and Isimpondro, Samtrampim, where it's also attached to a consonant. In fact, we can even say and that it you find the Mampondwen, that it you find the Mandebel. We can even say it's an advanced form of. Just give me a minute. You see, Mukaranga, sometimes when you greet, you say Tshobela. Tshobela. You don't say Tobela. No, you say Tshobela. That you pronounce. We can even say an advanced form of that is with an R. It's called a trill. It's a trill. TR. So when they say Tshobela, I hear a lot of Bapedi speak like this as well. Tshobela. Amampondo say Mtram, and Amandrebele say Mtrazan. Valubedu also use this as well. So I think it's just an advance, just the Ndebele and the Mpondo one is just one step stronger because they're very strong. Like they'll say Mtram. But you can tell it's like a strong T, like Mtram. My mother speaks like that sometimes. I'm not sure where she gets it from. Maybe from her mother. My granny. I don't know. Anyway, let's come back to R. The rolled R of Xitsonga and Sesotho and all that. That Kurula, Robala, that R when it comes to Nguni, it becomes a T. I want you to remember this. That R becomes a T. Even go ora litsatsi, go ora mollo, ukotha umlilo, go ora, ukuotha. The R becomes a T amongst indigenous languages. But when the R comes from outside, it becomes an L. This is the famous Zulu ilenk. It takes ilenk of Amazulu. It only becomes an L when it comes from a foreign language. I know these things are not taught in schools, so we're just going to have to teach each other here in the lives. This is why the Karanga link to Langa is completely nonsensical. Because within indigenous languages, there are rules. R from one native language to another always maintains a T. Maybe sometimes it may be TS, S because of the tekela that happens, the lisping. But R from one indigenous language to another never becomes an L. So when people use the word Karanga, and as if the word Karanga has anything to do with Ilanga itself, it's just out of ignorance, really. That's it. It's out of ignorance. And I'm going to explain when R becomes L in our native languages. I'll explain when that happens. It's a very specific case. It does happen, but it's a very specific case. And that R is not part of the word. That's why it becomes an L. I'll show you. Let's finish what I'm saying. So generally, R becomes T. It could be a hard T like dada, or it could be a soft T like tata, tula. So when Vatsonga say rula or rulani, Amazulu say tula or tulani. Check my latest video. I'm explaining the origins of the word tula. That word comes from tu or tu or do, the mouth. Because you ruler, because you shut the mouth. You shut the mouth, you ruler. That's why in all languages, for quiet, we just said tu, iti tu. Sometimes in isiXhosa we say iti chum, ityachum. Chum means to sow. Ukutunga. That's literally what chum means. Ityachum wena, ityachum. Chum means to sow. Sow your mouth. Literally. It means sow your mouth. Or iti All right, let's go back. The rolled R from one native language becomes T in Nguni. Good example, ruler becomes tula. Ne? Robala, it becomes tobala. Ukwehla, ukulala. Ruma becomes ukuthuma. Ruha becomes ukuthuka. Reka becomes ukuthenga. Ruha, I did mention that. Ukuthunga into. Uyitunga, to bring it together. Now this one is an interesting thing because there's another version where it's Luka, Tunga and Luka. So maybe there was some time in the past where R and L in our own languages became a thing, but that's for another day. Rata, Tanda, Buroko, Ubutongo, yes. In fact, I believe there was another one, Maroko, Amatongo. I believe there's another one. There's a late doctor, Uvusama not Vusama Zulu Matambo. He was a mathematician, I think. He was a mathematician. He's late now. He wrote he used to talk about mathematics from an indigenous perspective. Reisa Masapo, Kobeng. He talks about Maroko, Amatongo. Yes, Dr. Zulu Matambo. Interesting now. Oh, Matabo. Yes. Interesting. He mentions Masapo for bones, which is Amatambo. Once again, you see the T and S connection. There's something in the middle. So for Tambo and Sapo to be connected, you need the Swati Tambo to make that connection. That, oh damn, Swati combines both S and T. So definitely Swati is in the middle. You have S, Sapo, T, Tambo, and in the middle, Litambo. Oh, Tambo dala kade bemgadlaza madoda. Tambo dala kade bemqongqotha. And then Tambo is Rapo. Again, it's so beautiful. Oh. Okay. I'm happy with that. You have R, which is Ntate, Rara, which is Tata. And then, yes, well, if you have S, then you can have Sha and all that. But do you see how infinite this language thing can be? Because from Shapo, you could also now have Mashapo as well. In other languages, it could be Sha, because there's always these processes, which means there's no permanence in language. It's an evolution. Language always changes. Now, let me explain now, when does R become L in Nguni? One, when R comes from a foreign language. Always, when R comes from a foreign language, it will never, by foreign I mean outside of South Africa or outside of Africa. R that comes outside of South African native languages will never, ever be L in Nguni. It will never be anything else but L. For example, the English taxi rank, a rank. You see, the English R, ra. It's called an approximant. Taxi rank, it's ilengi. Taxi rama, ilama. And then you have hammer, Afrikaans hammer. Ihamile, fenster, a window. Ifestile. Lacher, ilali. So it's clear when it's a borrowed word, the R always becomes an L. 1. 2, in Nguni we have the L when it is a suffix. It's not the root of the word. It's a suffix signifying a verb. I'll give you an example. To sit or to stay, we say hlala. In Shona, it's easy. It's gara. Dinogara. Dihlala. Dinogara. Dihlala. But both hlala and gara, it's the same thing, because that ra in Shona and that la in isiXhosa are just suffixes that have been added to the root ga. You're not going to know that, of course. But I know it because if you go to Kunkia, to sit is just ga or cha, chara or ga. It shows you the root is ga. Probably from an ideophone, meaning to land on something. So there's no R sound in SA traditional languages. No. The very premise of what I'm saying is that there is R. What I'm saying is that it's there. I'm arguing against that there's no R. I'm not sure. R, okay, let me explain. And I want you guys to comment if you can understand what I'm saying. R, what we write down that we call R is just a notation of sound. What does exist is sound. So if you know anything about computer programming or software engineering, you have something called a variable. You declare a variable, you give it a name, but the variable is really just a location in space. in somewhere in the processor. So it's a space that is associated with any arbitrary value, right? So the variable could be anything. We could go to mathematics when we do equations, for example, simultaneous equations. You assign, you declare variables like A and B and C as your parameters, but A, B, and C could be anything. They could be anything. What matters is the value of the A, B, and C. So, same thing with letters. Letters are just representations of sound. So the letter you write down that you call A is just the letter. The real thing is the sound A. The letter you write down you call B. In fact, those letters were originally pictures. So the letter A, if you look at it, it's like this. It's like this with a thing. It's actually upside down. It's supposed to be like this with a thing. It's a head of a cow. These are the horns. It's Alep. Ukwalupala, seniority, old. It's a cow, a bull. And then it was taken from Egypt all the way to the Middle East, and then through that, all the way to the Greeks, it became Alpha, and then became A. And then you've got Bete or Botwe, Libota, a wall of a house, which is B, Libot or Ibotwe, Bete in Congo, which then becomes Bet or Beta in Greece. And then you've got Dala, like a closure of a hut. See, something that you hang down in a hut to close off. Dala must means hunger, to prevent things from living. In Dala, the idea of preventing things from living. Dala, which then becomes Dalat, which then becomes Delta. That's D. Those are pictures. So the first picture is a cow head. The second one is a house wall. The third one is just something, a closure for a house. And then you've got Gibela or Gimela, which is a camel. Camel has a load on the back. So G is originally a camel because of the load on the back. Gimela or Gimel or Gamma in Greece. That's why you've got gamma rays. All the letters were pictures, all of them. This is why we say the oldest evidence of human writing is here. There are specific shelters, sites where they've deciphered patterns. They decipher patterns like, these people are drawing this thing time and again, which means it must mean something. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that the letter is not the same as the sound. So what people fail to understand is that the letter R is just that. It's a letter. What R represents is a group of sounds. Sometimes those sounds can be written with any other letter. Thank you, Mukoni. Thank you. Sometimes those sounds could be represented with G. They could be represented with X. Whatever you want, as long as in your language you know what those sounds are. These sounds are called rhotic sounds. RHOTIC. Rhotic sounds. So rhotic sounds is what we think is R. It's actually rhotic sounds. And rhotic sounds exist in the indigenous native languages of South Africa and Southern Africa generally. Why am I saying Southern Africa? Because the languages are shared in Southern Africa. If you talk about Tsonga, you talk about Mozambique, you talk about Zimbabwe. It's Xhosa, same thing. Sesotho, same thing. It's not just in South Africa. All these languages are not just in South Africa, it's Southern Africa. So rhotic sounds exist across the different languages. Rolled R, is actually a specific rhotic sound. Let me actually get the proper name for it. Let me get the proper name for this sound so that we don't call them R, because they are not R. R is just a letter. It comes from the head of a person, by the way. The letter R. It's a person, it's a head of a person. It's called a resh. It's called resh. So, in the rhotic sound, the first one is the trill. It's called the trill. The one we call rolled R today. The Afrikaner R, rooi. That's called the trill. It exists in South Africa. Kurula, Xitsonga, Lirato, it exists. That is the first R. The second one is the tap or the flap. You see, sometimes in America, when they pronounce the word for water, they say water. That water, that there is actually the flapped R in terms of what sound it is. The Queen of England, the late Queen of England, Elizabeth, she liked to use the tapped R a lot. So when she speaks, she would say, very, very, very well, very well. That is a tapped R. It's a different type of R. We do not have that. But in Gqeberha, Xhosa speakers, I've heard them use this R when they pronounce D. So when they want to say madod, they'll say madora. That is a tapped R there. So it's there in our languages. I've also heard them say, when they want to say utata, they'll say urara. There was a funeral of a late bishop there in Gqeberha a few months ago, and I was watching it, and I'm listening to these people speak, and I'm like, damn, it's actually a dialectical pronunciation. This is dialect at play, because they don't say utata, they say urara. Urara was like this and like this. Urara told me this on this other day. Yeah, my lord. So that's R there. So that is a second R, tapped R. So Amaxhosa have tapped R, but they don't have trilled R like rrr. It doesn't exist. However, it's crazy because maybe because of influence from isiHlubi, there are words in isiXhosa that have R that we say, and these words are not English. Like when someone is farting, we say uyathura. When something is very black, or a person is very black, we say tsukuru. So maybe it's isiHlubi influence, most likely. Anyway, what is the second R, tapped R? The third R now, it's the uvula, the one I mentioned that Basotho like to use. Lerato laka. Eh? Lerato laka. Yeah, Basotho like that one. Then you've got the alveolar approximant. The alveolar approximant is the one that South African English speakers like to use. When they say rat, boo, that boo sound, it's called the alveolar approximant. So you see, it's 5 different sounds, but we all call them R, which is kind of misleading because these are different sounds. They are just rhotic in nature, but they've got different names. You've got the trill, you've got the tap, you've got the approximant, and then you've got the uvula, and then the last R is the guttural. Now let me see the name. Let me see the name. You see, Mukarang. What about the letter D, like in Kilobedu? Trau. I see that, actually. I see that is the same thing that Amampondo and Amandebele do when they say umtru. In my opinion, that seems like an advanced form of... It's a trill. Ne? It's still R, but this R only manifests when it's attached to a consonant, D or T. So it's an ejective R. I'm still going to find its name. I don't know its name. I'm not sure what its name is, that thing. But yeah, and then the last R is the guttural. How do you spell tsukuru? I see the similarity with ntsu. We have ntsu, by the way. We have ntsu for black. So in where I'm from, when we describe something that's black, we say imnyama tsu. That's what we say. Tsu. Now, the spelling is not very helpful because spelling depends on whatever the rules you make. You could make any rules as long as we follow them. That's it. But what matters is how I'm saying it. So you must listen to the sound instead of the spelling. It's two. Two. There's no nasal. There's no nasal. And then into is also something that's black. And then tsukuru is also black. So it's two with a G. Guru. Not ikuru. Guru. Yeah. Kata. I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out where do we use the word kata. Imnyama kata. I'm trying to think. I know it is somewhere at the back of my mind. I don't remember it now. But that's a nice word. I don't remember using it. Maybe it's been long. Maybe it's been long because it's a Xhosa that I speak. It's limited mostly online. Yabo. So it's said most of the words I used to speak growing up, I've lost them. Yeah. I'm still gonna look at it, Mukaranga, that sound. Well, I think it's an extremely important sound. The dr sound and the tr sound. I'm gonna find a category for them and I'll categorize them. Try to understand how those sounds come about. But it's a type of trill. Sometimes they are called blended sounds. So it takes two different sounds and adds them together. Yeah. Older people in the Eastern Cape sometimes speak something like that. So when they want to say intombi, my intombi is quite dry. Intombi. But my mom will say intombi. You see. We laugh at her when she speaks like that. But it's a feature of the language. Intombi. You see. Now, if you advance that even further, it ends up being intrombi. Yeah. So I've seen people speak like that. In fact, older people speak in a very, very, very different way. Even in Xhosa, they speak it in a very different. It's clear the way we speak, we were trained by an institution. The way they speak is native. Because they're not given rules. They just speak the way they learned from their forefathers. So when they want to say, Andiyamba, I will say Andiyamba. And for me, that is how I was taught at school. But older people will say, on Andiyamba. Now, as someone who understands linguistics, and ka are two different things. Has a glottal stop. So already, if I'm writing the sound down, if I'm notating the sound, it should be different. Andiyamba and andiyamba should be different completely. Is a feature that you find in what we call Khoi languages. And all Xhosa people speak like that. They speak like that properly. I don't even know how to explain it, but I do have some voice notes from the 1800s that I will play maybe the next few months when I do these lives. You guys are going to hear. I've got voice notes of Xhosa speakers who are native Xhosa and Xhosa speakers who are Mfengu from KZN. And isiHlubi speakers as well, Zulu speakers as well. And I'm also finding others from different languages. The rara in Sesotho is rolled R. It tends to hard T in isiXhosa, yes. Why does R become a T? Because they are both pronounced in the same area. Tata, rara, tata, rara. The only difference is that tata is ejective. So it's like it shoots. Ta, ta. Whereas rara is a trill. It's like rrr. That's how your tongue moves. Okay. I think I'm done with linguistics. Let me see if there's anything I want to discuss. I see it's late now. I think I prepared something. That's the thing. I think I prepared something. I'm just going to see quickly. Ish. Okay. Islala, I do have a couple of people who speak Iscele. I do have a couple of voice notes where people speak Iscele. I think it's close enough to Islala. Iscele is like a branch of Isizanti. So I think it's close enough to Islala. Abanu, they say Abanu. Ihlati, for fish, Ihlati, instead of Inhlanzi. I do have a couple of Isicele voice notes as well. Islala, it's going to be very hard because, you see, with Islala, we just don't want to paint people badly, but Islala was killed by missionaries. They told people that they're going to go to hell if they speak Islala. It's the language of demons. And also by some people who were very powerful in KZN. They hated Islala, so for whatever reason, the language ended up dying. So there's also that. It's very sad because it was it's a good language. You see, Islala actually connects Nguni to Xitsonga. That's it, straight. It connects Nguni to Xitsonga. No, nothing in between. If you have Islala, that's it. You have Tsonga Nguni. That's what Islala is. It's like a Tsonga Nguni language. Yes, correct. Oh, there's another thing I wanted to say. You know, when I was listening to those people from the 1800s, they don't say njalo. They say njaqo. So they'll be talking like, "Hi, kuhlala kunjaqo." And I'm like, this is how at home they used to speak when I was young, you know? Like they used to always say, "Hayi kanjaqo kanye, kanjaqo." And it really absolves some of the stuff we teach people, you know. People think we make this stuff up, that clicks die out and soft sounds take over. Sometimes soft sounds die out and clicks take over, but these days it's like it's the clicks that are dying. But clicks can form out of soft sounds too. I've said it in the past. I'll give you an example. You see, biscuits. When we were younger, we didn't call them biscuits. We called them ngeskits. I'm telling you. So we took a non-click word and converted this consonant into a click. In ngeskits. Literally called it that. And then there's another word. I heard it just now. Oh, the word to bump. The word to bump, like a ball. When a ball is like bouncing, we say iyagqampa instead of bump. We say gqamp. So we take the word bumper, we change it to gqampa. Even if you're walking with a pounce or like a bounce, nyana, today I got a gqampi endleleni. So it's a non-click, we change it into a click. Biscuits, we change it to ngeskits. Bump, we change it to dump. I'm not sure about boom. Like the word boom. I think we just say it is a click, boom. So clicks can be born out of that. It does happen. Like there's a guy here, Liema. He's confirming what I'm saying, that they call biscuits ngeskits. Yabo. I like that. I think we should do more of that because a lot of click words have been softened now. But we can take soft sounds and form click words too. There's a gentleman, one of the questions that were asked earlier was whether there's a relationship between L and S and Y and all that. And I said, yes, but you need to have wide knowledge to be able to explain and justify it. Because there's no point me saying, yes, there is a relationship, and I'm unable to demonstrate with practical examples. Now I remember the word kuma in Xitsonga and fumana in isiXhosa, and I was like, there you go. I'm able now to explain it. So that is a good thing. Now, when I do another live, not now, because I'm going to stop now, I want Sotho speaking people, Tswana speaking people, Xitsonga, Balobedu, etc. There's something known as ukuhlonipha, ne? Ukuhlonipha really comes from the word amahloni, shyness. So hlonipha is the behavior of showing a habit of avoiding things. It's avoidance out of respect, which we also as a form of shyness. Yes. Inhloni, correct. Inhloni is close. Now, hlonipha is such a strong part of our culture that we have words that are reserved for certain things at certain times for certain reasons. And these words, we can call them is hlonipho, shisasi, isihlahla. I'm not understanding Mukaranga. You can extrapolate on that. So now I want you guys in your languages to tell me if you do have this practice, because I don't believe there's a culture that doesn't do this in South Africa. You have words that are considered secret words for certain things. I'll give you an example. Not even secret words, maybe alternative. Let's say a young woman gets married to my family, and then the woman can't say certain words that resemble my father's name or my grandfather's name or another man's name in the house, because we practice a culture of avoidance. So friendliness in the indigenous setting is limited. I cannot be overly friendly to my mother-in-law. In some instances, you can't even look them in the eye or even be alone with them in the room or hug them originally. Same as my wife. She cannot be overly friendly. We call it ukuhlonipha, that thing. Same thing with words. Same thing with behavior. You can't even walk in certain parts of the family. Like if you're a new wife, you have not even given birth, there's something we call ukucwezela, to walk on the side. You are given a young child known as impeles. That child will help you walk in the yard itself. You have to avoid certain parts of the yard until you give birth to your first child. Then it opens up a bit. When you give birth to your other child and then another child, all of a sudden you start to have access to certain things. So ukuhlonipha is not just in the words, it's in a lot of stuff. But the word part now is very important to be preserved. So if she can't say my father's name, she can't say our clan name, like my clan name, Mfene. She can't say Mfene openly. She must find another word. So that would be the word Ngagala. So when she speaks about Mfene, she will say Ngagala. When she speaks about the bush, Hlati, she will need to look for a different word like Inget. My mother does this to this day. She can't say certain words. If she doesn't have an alternative word, she just puts something called a placeholder. I'll give you an example. One of my grandfathers is a person called Mpendulo. Excuse me, Mpendulo. Now, to avoid even saying that name, my mother just says Gamakulu whenever she wants to say Mpendulo. So if she wants to say, give me an answer, she will say, give me a Gamakulu. Kannikela Gamakulu bendithethe ngayo, bendikubuza yona. Because Gamakulu is a great ancestor of ours. So she can't say the name out loud. Gamakulu means great name. In fact, there was a presenter on TV on this show called Jigamajika. Umpendulo, the Swati guy, I think. My mother couldn't call him. So, look at that guy, Gamakul. You see, she couldn't call him openly because the name is found in the bloodline. Same thing with the chicken. She can't say the name of a chicken because one of my sisters has a name similar to that. You see, so now we develop a culture of this extensive vocabulary, alternative words for many things, and it's good because a lot of these words you find in other languages too. Now you guys who speak Sotho, Tswana, Pedi, Ndebele, Zulu, I know in isiZulu these words are there. Zulu people may not know them. I know them. Yeah, boy. It's exactly Impande, for example, Mpande. Mpande. In fact, even the month called Umandulo now, that month was actually called Umpandulo originally, but because of Umpande, they had to change it to Umandulo, which is good because at least it's that time of the year anyway. Umandulo makes sense, Ukwandula to start, but the real name of the month is Mpandulo. Mpandulo, because that's what the name means. Ukupandula is a verb. Ukupandula has to do with stabbing or digging into something repeatedly. Think about digging into the land. I think that's what the name originally meant. And they changed it now because of Umpande. Amandebele still use Umpandula. Exactly. That's the correct name of that month. I think Abambo, who came to Eastern Cape, also preserved Mpandula. But Amazulu could not because they had to avoid Umpande, correct? So even the roots, you guys had to avoid saying the name of the roots is Impand. You had to say Inqabo. That is absolutely correct as well. And it's not just at that level of the nation, it's at the level of home as well. So we had to keep up. I know a lot of words because my mom can't use them. So for the bush, my mom can't say hlati, she says ngete. For inkuku, she has to say imbabama. You understand? She can't say inkuku. For Impendul, she has to say gamakulu. For many things, she has to call them a pot. She can't say imbiza. She has to say inteleko. For a dish, she can't say isitya. She has to say ismundelo. So we learn those things as well. Oh, ismundelo, inteleko. Ukuteleka is to cook. To cook, teleka. So if you guys also have that, I would really like to have an extensive vocabulary of isihlonipho in Sesotho, isihlonipho in Sepedi, isihlonipho in isiNdebele. I would love to have an extensive vocab. I remember maybe 8 years ago when I was learning isiNdebele from Zim, I realized it's very similar to isiXhosa, but not just isiXhosa, even other languages in SA. It's interesting, man. You know, language is such an interesting thing. All languages are needed. That's what you learn over time. That we actually need all the languages that exist. They can't die because there's always, even if it's just one word, that the language is gonna preserve, and this word somehow it's gonna connect with another one different, and it makes sense. So it's a very sad thing when certain things start dying. Even languages like Tram, you know, we can only now look at words that were captured in the 1800s. And fortunately, those words still live in isiXhosa and in isiZulu and Sesotho, you see. Fortunately, like what I was saying about the word tu or do for tula and tutuzela and duduza to comfort people, at least those words still exist. And we can see in Tram, we can see in Ngu, we can see in Kawo that the words were there, but the languages are dead as independent languages. Now they are part of transitional languages like isiZulu, isiXhosa. Yabo. So it's always said when a language dies, or even a practice like isihlonipho, we cannot allow these things to die. Somebody must record them. Worse in isiZulu. It's worse because When I looked at Izihlonipho from KZN, they are so nice to look at. Like Ixoka is a name for a man, you know, a man who's not married. Ixoka instead of Isok. Now, if you go to Xoka in Kwi and in Kwemana, you start to see a completely different idea. Xwaci, it's a name for a stick in isiZulu. Isihlonipho, uxwaci. You know, when they talk about Swati and Swazi, in the click form, it's Xwaci. And it's not just gibberish. People think Isihlonipho, then it's not gibberish, it's real words. Now, when you look at Xwaci, it's Xwa, to fight, and Ci, a tree, a stick. Think about it. Xwa, to fight, is ukulwa, hulwa, or hulwana. And Ci, for a tree or a stick, is Ti, like uluti. Isihlonipho. So if you guys have any Isihlonipho that you know, whether it's Ndebele or isiZulu or Sepedi or Kilobedu, Xitsonga, etc., please hit me up. I need to create a directory. I'm going to store them somewhere and I'm going to decipher them. And also, if you've got names of your ancestors that you don't know, like weird names, weird sounding names, like Kai or Kei. You know, like there's names that it's like a 2-syllable word. Ngai. Or Ke. You know, the Kikwa people, they also have a name Ke. You must send those things to me. Now, as long as I can see that the word exists, I'll find it. I think that's where I'm going to end it today. It's 12:30 now. Thank you very much, my people. Yes, please send through. It's very important. It's very important. Otherwise, they are stealing from us. They're stealing our heritage because we are just quiet, Tina. You know, we're just quiet, obsessed about things that have nothing to do with us, whilst our own things are falling apart and lagging behind. Busy with Cameroon. We are from Cameroon. Hey, Baba, shut it. It's over now. You're here, even if you're from there, which you're not. But anyway, usandile lona ke ngujamba sengulisa ngucansi ngusanza nguhlanga umvelweni ngusidulu ngube mhlophe kuncagala lona untsilane kumwandla umandu afikele uhlangene kuzaba umfene mazabe zabela abafokazi zale manzo shini konyenza komaphango ongqalo nqange nxasi noxoxo qhamo wele oyini bafazi benzikizile tshona iphazima ithabathisto ngomlehlelo lesifazi cama ukusha kokhokho bam ke amangqosini othithiba ociwoshe ogaba abantu bomlambo cama ukusha kokhokho bam ke amaqhamela amagcina onokwindla onqanqashe into ezidla igusha zabantu izidulu zamathafa omalamba edlile omalamba yenhle ndiyacaba kusha xa sitsho ke tatala hote tsi mna ke ndiphuma phantsi kwelikarharhabe utsinga kanomagwayi wasembo uzamazama ilizwe lizamazama usiba lamdaka usambatha zimfutshane kanti zomlingana kube izinto uthi zimfihla amadolo phantsi kwelamaxhosa madoda ke sikhahlela uzanzolo sithi zanzolo sibe sikhetha kwezinye izibi udumbela imilenze unondwangu nondwangu lowo ugangatha ilizwe libe ngumgangatho umamkeli wentlaninge ngentlaninge camakho. Thank you guys, bye bye. I'll post it.